It's still bad. It's buzzing. Talk. 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 I can't hear you. There's no word. Say something. Nothing. So now Joe's going to come up, and then I'm going to tell him that there's still a buzz. I wonder if you can hear it. Can you hear it there? People in YouTube land? Buzz? Oh, we'll have Joe here pretty soon. Oh, here we are. You were telling me that this isn't usually your topic?
No, I mean, right. I mean, well, I did write a book on it, but I haven't kept up with all of the minutiae that's taken place in the last year in Gaza.
Uh-huh. And what are you thinking about tonight? Why did you come tonight?
Well, obviously, as I was raised in a secular Jewish family, and it's the responsibility of, I think, of all Jews to speak out for hundreds of years, ever since the Enlightenment. Jews in America and in Europe and in the diaspora have had a tradition of aligning with the oppressed, aligning with the downtrodden, and many they were at the forefront. Like the Jews of the civil rights movement of the northern students that went to South. I think over half of them were Jewish, and this tradition, which could be said, goes back to the prophetic tradition of the Isaiah and Jeremiah and the great prophets. This tradition of standing with people against the power of the state has been betrayed by the state of Israel.
Are you against the state of Israel?
Well, when you're against the state of Israel, I don't think...
Civil War, not the Civil War, the civil rights, when, a lot of Jewish people were marching, things were troubled in Palestine and Israel even then.
Yeah, there were less Jews that were aware of it then, because we still thought, first of all, the Israeli alliance with the United States government really didn't become firm until after the 1967 war. Then, according to Noam Chomsky's right, Israel became, the bulldog, the strategic asset of the United States. It's always been a vexed relationship because Israel doesn't like the... But clearly, what Israel represents is the triumph of the idea of security through military might rather than security through surrendering to the goodness of God.
Now, what do you
put that in non-theistic terms, justice and peace and so on and so forth, and that gets into theological questions. But
what about this event tonight? Do you think that America is looking to the Jewish intelligentsia to get us out of this mess? And is the Jewish intelligentsia rising up to the challenge?
I don't know. What do you mean by the Jewish intelligentsia? I mean, most Jews are in the government. For example, or who have been associated with either the Clinton administration. Well, we don't even need to speak about the Bush administration. They're famous as the neocons. But Lanny Davis was on, maybe saw him on Democracy Now! Yesterday or the day before. He was a big supporter of Clinton. I'm not sure what. Certainly.
I just think Trump?
Well, he's defending everything Israel does, and the intellectuals who are involved in state power, whether they've been in the Clinton administration or the Jewish administration, have become what Chomsky called about the intelligentsia in the 1960s. He supported the war in Vietnam, the new Mandarin. So those are the intellectuals who are enmeshed in state power are not going to come out and support the Palestinians. But it's up to people who have the kind of people on this kind of gathering who are independent intellectuals or independent workers or independent professionals or students or whatever. What did you want to say about Chomsky?
Oh, Chomsky, Amy Goodman, they don't usually deal with something like 9/11. I had a question because
that's another topic, though.
Well, we were talking about a town meeting, and we have to write our questions down. So I wrote questions down, and I said, can we think outside the box? What if Hamas is an asset of Israel? Or, even more, what if Hamas is an asset of an independent international weapons cartel to drag the U.S. into war? Can we think in a really more sweeping way instead of being fighting over?
That's not too convincing to me for one reason. It may not be true. I'm not going to say on that, but that the logic that I find flawed in that is that you don't need Hamas to drag U.S. into war. That assumes, your question assumes that there's good faith involved in the U.S., that the U.S. is there to protect the Israeli citizens, that the Israelis care about Israeli citizens. That's not a premise I make in the first place.
But I'm making that assumption about you and about Joe. I think there are good-hearted Americans.
Yeah, but they don't have power.
Yeah, but in order to find out where does the power lie? I mean, were you a psychiatrist?
Psychologist
at one time.
I guess I still am. I have a PhD in psychology.
And you learned to step outside the box and question your system, right?
Well, yeah, I did. But I started questioning. I was a rebel at 12, and I was in the anti-war movement. But I was indoctrinated in graduate school. I believed. That was before they had all the drugs, but I did believe in the mental health system. I wasn't aware of. I didn't know at the time that I would, in 1980 when I was in graduate school, that 10 years later I would be making an alliance with what at the time was called the Mental Patients Liberation Movement, and that my hope for change now as a professional within the field does not lie with professionals. It relies upon, the hope rests upon the possibility of a growth and a galvanization of the Mental Patients Liberation Movement. Okay, now it's called different names: Psychiatric Survivors Movement, Consumers Movement, blah blah blah. My book now is on what's been termed the Mad Pride Movement.
Okay.
Well, I was never locked up. I just feel more affinity with the victims of psychiatry and psychology than I do with the perpetrators.
Well, I'm talking more about the victims of weapons. Like Hamas definitely is training children to hate and to carry weapons, and the suicide thing, they have a little bunny dressed up and says all this. So that's for sure going on. The question is, who is behind it? And I only bring up 9/11 because it's such a splendid demonstration of high technology. I mean, how can a building become dust in 11 seconds? And there was so much uninvestigated. And I only found out recently that the New York City Council, anytime they wanted, could have investigated it.
Well, you sound like you've done some research into this, but...
Well, let's put it this way. Weapons are to international politics what drugs are to our psyche.
I know from reading books on Middle East that the primary, buyer, consumer of American weapons, you know who it is? Saudi Arabia, I believe. It might be Egypt. I think it's Saudi Arabia. What do you call it? Buyer. What do you call it?
No.
I mean, it's not Israel that buys the most weapons from the United States.
No, but it's the black ops. It's the weapons that we don't know about. It's the technologies that are...
Well, you're talking on a different topic. I was just talking about the fact that the military-industrial complex will sell weapons to anyone who wants to buy it. Their interest is in fomenting war.
Okay.
Yeah.
But could it?
And so there's an interest in fomenting war on the part of the American state, because it's so enmeshed with the military-industrial complex, and with the Israeli state. There's a financial interest in fomenting war between Palestinians and Israel because it sells weapons. You know, no war, no customers, no money, no profits.
How do we break that addiction to weapons and profits? Because everybody's suffering for lack of profits now here in America, and they're kind of guilty because they think, gosh, what if I was invested in some hedge fund or whatever that was invested in some of these nasty things?
I don't know. Famous philosopher once said he doesn't have a very good history of choosing the right side, but he said
was
this.
Was that Nietzsche?
No, Heidegger.
Heidegger,
even worse. But he said, I think it was in the early 1950s. He said, he was not a theist. He said, only a God can save us now.
Are you feeling that?
Well, you look at the world, you're in a situation, you try to extrapolate from what exists now to what many of us dream of. It seems like there'd be some kind of supernatural kind of events that would have to take place. The other alternative is, things would, the old idea that things have to get worse before they get better.
What about something just as simple as passing notes forward instead of a town meeting where you would be able to speak out? Because when
I was complaining about that.
What were you?
I don't know why they do that. That's become a new thing. I don't think that has much. I don't think that has anything to do with sale of weapons or the genocide of the Palestinians. I just don't.
It's more about people getting together and using their best opportunities.
Some of the most interesting exchanges used to happen at these meetings when people would get up and spontaneously ask the questions. Now, if true, every now and then there would be a nod or someone from Spartacus League who would go on and wouldn't shut up, so someone would say, shut up, or usually the audience, and they'd shut them up. But those were the most interesting exchanges. I'll tell you a reason. Not only was it better because the questions weren't pre-selected, it was because the people who most urgently needed to talk were seen. Whereas now they're just going to, someone might just write down it really destroys his spontaneity. It's like, it's the principle. It's not like it's pernicious here because there's going to be some amount of chaos anyway, but it's like, trying to say we can do without the Holy Spirit or something, Christ, Jesus said, I don't want to sound like a Orthodox Christian or anything, but it's when you're not prepared that it comes upon you, those words that are most important. So I'm not in favor of this idea of everything has to be written out and pre-selected in advance.
Right.
In my experience, that really takes people leave early. It takes a damper out of not only for the people who speak, also the audience is less involved.
Right.
And I don't get to ask a question because they never choose me from my questions. Whereas if I'm standing up there, somehow I usually get picked.
Really?
Yeah.
What question would you ask if you had a chance?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't heard them speak.
Let's stop it and I'll ask you afterwards, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of the last time I was at a place. It wasn't like it's
evening tonight. Look at the program. Yet, in the spirit of the urgency of the moment and our task, we're going to do everything we can to end this evening by 9:25, so that you can go out into the night and into the coming days with conviction and determination and do something. And tonight, we have a very diverse panel of speakers, and they are going to make the case that indeed there is a massacre of the people of Gaza that is nothing less than a war crime. As the Palestinian death toll approaches 1,000, where is the culpability for the 43 civilian refugees who were bombed taking shelter in a UN school in Jabalia? What do we think about and what should we do when reading, as I'm sure many of you did in Saturday's New York Times, about one family, the Samunis family, 100 of whom sought shelter where they were advised to go, and 30 of whom were killed. And as a New York...
Whether Hamas or PLO or any other faction or any group or whether in prison as prisoners, and we can't forget one of the most eloquent and thoughtful voices amongst the Palestinians, Baghouti. I'm not sure if I can, but I can certainly speak closer to the mic, which may be helpful, I hope. Anyway, today I read a report in the New York Times that insists that Israeli citizens are unanimous in support of the war. And that quote, a tiny little sentence in the middle of the whole horrifying article, the largest demonstration against the war so far, with some 6,000 participants, was organized by an Arab political party.